series in conversation with. And I am really so excited to have in the hot seat our very own DG, Dr. Phil Mjwara. Apologies to all that we had to reschedule, but as you can see, the DG is an honorable man. He gave me his word and he made the time, for which we are very grateful, DG. So just a very brief introduction for all of those who are joining us. DG is a graduate from Wits University, having completed his BSc, MSc, and PhD, and in the fields of physics, more specifically laser physics. So the only thing I know about lasers is the ones you use as pointers. So you're going to learn a little bit more about your niche in the field of physics. And DG's passion for physics and technology led him to eventually take on the position of Director General at the then Department of Science and Technology, now morphed into the Department of Science and Innovation since 2006. Wow, DG, you've served in several administrations of our new democratic government under several ministers. And I was also pleased to see that you've been the recipient of many awards for DG. So that's such a cool accolade. And you're so humble that you don't even boast it, but we are very proud of you for all of that. And you've held several other positions, and much of all of that is written in the flyer, so you could look at it. So DJ, let's just go back a little bit. You also are a member of the Academy, and I've noted that you've been a member since 2000. So you're one of the pioneers, almost founding members. I hope your subscriptions are fully paid up, eh? Otherwise, keep coming to you. Nonetheless, but you've also featured in our series of legends of people. So that's going to serve as a useful coming to. But tell us firstly how you got excited about science, and what was that spark that ignited your passion for science?
No, thanks very much, Professor Sudial. And let me start again by apologizing for the previous session, which we couldn't have. We were informed quite late that there was a cabinet lekgotla, and for those meetings, it's not easy not to be around, because if the minister needs something urgently, he sends you a note and you have to probably brief him. So I was just scared that even having an hour out of the meeting might be bad, because he might just need me at that hour. So my apologies for that. And yes, I have been in this position for quite some time. So I am looking forward to retirement soon. I know people don't believe that I'm close to retirement, so maybe I should give my mom and my dad thanks for the genes that I have. But it's actually very difficult in terms of the question that you've asked me, when this passion started. Usually these things are triggered by one or two things. So I can remember perhaps three that probably influenced my move into this area. The first one was I grew up in a township, and where I was, there was a gentleman who was a mechanic, so his role was to fix cars. So I got excited because he would strip the engine apart, fix whatever he needed, and put it back again. So he explained what this was all about, and there was probably a young man who was asked to take a spanner and give it to him. But that interest, I think, of how the engine works and why the wheels of the car move because of fuel, and he would explain spark plugs, carburetor. So it probably didn't give me the scientific aspects of how the engine works. So I think that's probably the first one. The second one, I grew up in an environment in Durban where we used to go to town using buses and trains, and in particular buses. I was always fascinated about, again, the buses and how they work and how they would move from A to B, the number of people that were being moved by the bus. And then, of course, when I got to the university, I was taught by a gentleman at Fort Physics who was so passionate about how he taught us physics that it was almost difficult for you not to have an interest in this area. He taught us a physics major, Professor Seretlo. He passed away a couple of years ago, and may his soul rest in peace. So probably those were the three areas where you just got yourself in a situation where you had an interest of how things work. And maybe that's where the interest started. So this was at Fort about 2009. No, not 2009. 1979.
1979, yeah. And laser physics, what's all that about?
Oh, no, when I completed my MSc at Forte, I then went to Wits, wanted to do my PhD there. And then I joined a group that was using laser light to characterize materials. It was using a technique called Brillouin scattering. Essentially, you pass light through a material and you then, if you like, look at the interface between light and material, and you probe certain phenomena in the material. And then by analyzing the scattered light, you'd get information about what was happening in these materials. So these materials were materials that had the potential to become solid electrolytes. And as you know, chemical electrolytes have a problem of degrading. So it was more condensed matter physics, but using lasers as a way of probing and analyzing what was happening in these materials. So that's how I started with the laser. So eventually got the PhD on that work, and then came to the department. Well, after VETS, I came to teach physics at UNISA. Spent about 2 years in an exciting environment teaching physics in distance education environment. And then I was requested, seconded to the then Department of Arts, Culture, Science, and Technology to lead a team to do the foresight study, the first foresight study in South Africa. This was mid-80s up to 1990. And then at the end of that project, the South African government, and in particular, Nuclear Energy Corporation of South Africa, had lots of lasers that they were using for molecular laser isotope separation. So to separate isotope using high energy from lasers. And because that program was brought to an end in the late 80s, I was then asked to head the National Laser Center because of the background of my PhD using lasers. So I learned more about the type of lasers then as I was leading this institution on development of some of the lasers, use the lasers for applications in material processing, using lasers in the defense industry. So I then also myself pick up all the aspects of laser development, laser usage at that stage. And then, as you then know, eventually got to the CSIR as a vice president, vice CEO at the time. Unfortunately, I didn't spend a lot of time, and then I came here in the department in 2006.
Yeah, so now on the one hand, this passion at the forefront of exciting science in an academic environment, and then you groove into the policy landscape. How was that transition, and how smooth was it, and is it still a smooth pathway?
I think it was smooth in the sense that my experience of having worked at a university, both being a student, having been a lecturer at Forte, VETS and UNISA. So you actually had the workings of an academic institution. And then I had been in government, remember, for the Foresight study, then came to a research institution, both at the Laser Center and as a senior vice president at the CSIR. You already had a sense of the elements of the science and innovation sector, having worked there. And of course, I also spent 1 year at the University of Pretoria. So the transition was smooth in that sense, that you had worked in the sector and different elements. But of course, what I didn't know when I joined here is how government works and why you needed to have a policy that guides the sector in terms of what it does. But I was very lucky because I had an excellent predecessor, Dr. Rob Adam, and a gentleman called Dr. Adi Patterson, who is now in Australia. In fact, when I joined Adi Patterson, who had been at the CSIR with me at the time, he was in the department. So I think we spent a lot of time with him, getting to understand what policy means and what my role as an accounting officer, DG, really means. So the first 9 months of 2006 was therefore a learning period. But as I say, I was very lucky that I had these two gentlemen who I found here. But of course, I also had an excellent team in the department, and we've been very lucky in this department to have a group of deputy directors general and staff really that is extremely committed. So I learned a lot from the staff as well. But of course, over time, knowing what the challenges of the sectors were, having been there, I started to propose some changes in policy landscape and asking some questions. Why are we not, in certain instances, having the impact that science, technology, and innovation should do? So as you then know, we've then evolved over the time to try different things to really try and optimize what the science, technology, and innovation system should do and can do. And I think we've done reasonably well in terms of that policy landscape, and of course what the NSI, the National System of Innovation, has done for the country.
Right, right. Well, in recent years, both the White Paper on Science, Technology, and Innovation from 2019 and the now, table draft of the Decadal Plan seems to be at the forefront of the lead wave within the DSI to architect, a kind of ripple effect across the NSI landscape. Why the need for two such documentation? Could the one not suffice? I mean, obviously, the Decadal Plan spells out what we would like to see happen over a 10-year period. But I have been a little bit confused. I mean, I understand what both intend to do, but why do we need the two?
Well, the white paper is basically a document that provides an overarching policy framework for government on science, technology, and innovation. So if you want a metaphor, it's a document that basically says we will travel from here to Cairo. And we have the intentions of going to Cairo, and we hope to use an aeroplane. But after you have a white paper and it gives the policy direction, you then need to know what route are we going to use. Are we going via the east route of countries in Zambia, Kenya, Ethiopia, and then Sudan, all the way to Cairo? Are we going to go through Central Africa, or are we going to go all the way up to Nigeria and then across the desert? So that's what the Decadal Plan is. It spells out the details to implement, if you like, this broader direction that you have set out with the white paper. So we have developed this Decadal Plan, therefore, as an implementation document. And as you know, in implementing it, the idea was that we do not want to, if you like, we want to build on the excellence and what the National System of Innovation had done over the years. But we felt that it's time for us to raise our hands as the science system and an innovation system to say there are elements of ourselves that can work directly to solve the problem of the country in a world that is changing and in a world that requires a lot of technological advances as solutions to the problems we have. So that's the reason why we then had the decadal plan. It spells out what needs to be done, and it spells out who you can do it with and how in terms of resources and how you work together with different partners.
No, thanks for that clarity, and I really love the analogy. In fact, yesterday when we had our AGM, we had Professor Mary Scholes deliver, our recently reintroduced special lecture, and she used a very, very good analogy of a refrigerator. She says, she was talking about global challenges and sustainable development, and she says, well, we all use a refrigerator to keep things cool and to preserve and whatever. And then we know that it is working well. But if you were to strip that refrigerator and put all the parts out separately, nothing will work. Okay. So I put it to you that these policies are the same, that you can put the individual pieces side by side, but unless they are assembled correctly and in the right, format, nothing will work. What is that one thing that we need for the decadal plan to be architected in a way to achieve the mandate and the objective that you've spelled out in the decadal plan? Or there could be a few things.
Yes, but one of the key ones, Professor Sudial, is something I've learned when you grow older, is what I would term or phrase orientation. Mm-hmm. The world of yesterday and the world of tomorrow and the world of today are all different. And yeah. If you have an orientation that keeps looking at the world of yesterday, you will not going to survive on the world of today, and you will not survive on the world of tomorrow. So I think at the heart of what we're trying to do, we hope that the stakeholders will begin to say, we've reached a particular milestone as the National System of Innovation, and we do require to reinvent ourselves. That's probably, in my view, the most single ingredient to take what, if it's written on paper, and as you say, what you see on paper, it makes perfect sense, in my view. To say that we use science to modernize sectors of the economy, as you know, in the priorities of the decadal plan, it makes sense. If you don't modernize agriculture, you're going to be left behind. Yesterday or day before, we were launching something with the Department of Agriculture called the National Biosecurity Hub. If you export products to Europe and elsewhere in the world, unless you have scientific information that is provided to those that you export fruits, vegetables, that you've done all what is required on phytosanitary, and you have data that supports you, your products in the market are not going to be accepted. So there is science, innovation at play in the trade aspects of agriculture. We are in South Africa in it's a semi-arid part of the land where we do agriculture. We do know that as a result of climate change, we are seeing shifts in where you can produce certain crops. Now, as scientists, we're doing world-class research in this country in the areas of climate and earth system science. But if that work doesn't help the country to provide data and policy on this migration of crops in how you can use precision agriculture to reduce the amount of water in a semi-arid part of the country, you will not be able to maintain even your current GDP contribution by agriculture. We can do the same with mining. People say that in South Africa, we probably still have minerals that could last us another 80 to 100 years. Of course, the Council for Geosciences Sciences continue to identify those minerals, but to extract them at the depths where they are and to do it in a sustainable mining way, it requires that we bring in different technologies and innovations. And the science system need to raise its hand and say, we think we can make a contribution. We have been told that we are in the age of pandemics. And you would know this yourself as a scientist in this field, and that this is going to continue to be a complex set of pandemics moving from animals to humans. And if we don't start to think about these huge investments in the bio area, biotech area, and biosciences area, and in fact, how you bring that to diagnostics. So it's an interface between that and how you bring that to human beings. And these are approaches on how we do our science that are slightly different, but still based on, if you like, the basic sciences that we have invested in, we wish to continue to invest in. So that's really what we're trying to do, to make sure that we raise our hands as the National System of Innovation to try and say there are areas of problems in society where we can make contributions. However, just my last point, having said that, we are very much aware that we don't do this at the expense of investing in the basic sciences. We can always argue and debate what's the right balance. But I think to say that we have to remain only in doing basic sciences, in my view, will be dangerous for ourselves. We will become irrelevant, and hence some of these ideas that I've just shared with you.
Yeah, no, thanks. Khadija, I just want to make an announcement that in the latter 20 minutes or so, I will open up the floor for discussion. So if participants would like to raise some questions, please use the Q&A box, and I will get to that a little bit later. So thanks, DG, for those insights. So one of the things that really troubles me, and when I was still General Secretary and not in the hot seat of the Executive Officer at the Academy, I was asked to attend a meeting on youth development that was hosted in Senegal by the Senegalese Academy of Science, ANST. And there, for the first time, I lived in an insular laboratory box in my days at the coalface of being at the bench. And this was one of the first exposures I had in the regional environment, bringing together not just the policy advancements, but also looking at the place of the youth in advancing the future for the development on the African continent. And I was quite astounded to learn, and again, it's because of my naivety, not because the information is not there, that so much of our productivity happens in the informal sector, not in the formal sector of the economy. And now, since being at ASAF and looking at stakeholder engagements, etc., I am acutely aware that the same applies in this country, that there's a lot that goes on in the informal sector. So what is it that we are doing through the department and the stakeholders to enhance the filtering of this exotic scientific information and data that translates for effective advancement and development of activities in that informal sector? So what has been your experience of seeing how this translation and imparting of scientific knowledge? We know it happens among our peers in academia and within our entities, etc. But that cross-sectionality across the populace for the advancement of that triple burden of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. What is done and what, in your opinion, should be done to filter information across these zones?
We were very excited a couple of months ago. My memory would let me down when the institution at the HSRC CESD conducted what they called innovation in informal sector. So we have this report, I think it's about 9 months ago that they did this. So it was a very enlightening survey of innovation in informal sector. And we've always tended to, look at innovation in the formal sector. So we have already looked at what the proposals out of that survey meant and how, as the science system, we can work fairly closely with the informal sector to enhance what is already happening there, but just bringing perhaps science in order to enhance the quality of either service provision or the products offering that are happening in the formal sector. So we are looking at, for instance, linking them with the technology stations. As you know, it's a program that is running out of the Technology Innovation Agency, and the purpose of these stations is to reach out to a range of stakeholders who may need technical and scientific knowledge in order to improve what they are doing, whether it's at the product level or at the design level. So that's what we've done. But we've gone beyond that. We've also piloting something which is called the Technology Acquisition Development Fund. It's essentially, and I'm linking this to the issue of youth that you mentioned. Sometimes young people, especially in the area of ICTs, they're very, very innovative. And as you said, we have a large youth in South Africa and the rest of the continent, which we need to tap into. So this TADF, as it is called, is meant to fund somebody who has an idea of of how you can improve service delivery in government, for instance. It could be an app, it could be anything that they have. So what we are trying to do now is to say, once those ideas have been proven through this fund that will provide, how will we then link those service delivery innovations into government? That's the second. The third is, over a period of time, we've rolled out 3 M-Labs, as we call them. These are laboratories of where young people could come and do anything that they'd like to do. Right. And so we encourage and we support them. There's one here in Gauteng, working closely with the communities in Soweto. We've got one in the Northern Cape, and I think we've got one in KZN. So these are sort of new instruments to link young people, link knowledge, and link what's happening in the informal sector. And then lastly, I'm very, very excited that we are now looking at how we could consider something that I think the academy would find exciting. How about young people who complete their degrees and they say, oh gosh, now that I have done a degree on environmental sciences, I can see how I can use this to improve what's happening in my own community. Can we give them a small amount of money, set up a small enterprise for them to do that. So this is something that we are thinking about. So it will not only be funding established scientists, but young people who have wonderful ideas that you and I, sorry, Himla, we are a bit older. They've got these wonderful ideas. Why don't we nurture them and then bring them to the
brilliant
science system that we can take these ideas into the marketplace. So those are some of the few ideas that I think are in the marketplace. There may be others, but I hope you're getting a sense that our minister keeps emphasizing and reminding us that anyone has the capacity to innovate.
Yes, no, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the latter statement, because it should be a paradigm shift in terms of how we co-create with community engagement. And you know, you will see when we meet in a couple of weeks for our engagement with the DSI that we've tabled our transformation strategy. And inbuilt into that strategic plan is a big chunk on knowledge transformation. You know, in this country, we play a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but we tend to place a lot more emphasis on just the equity aspect. But from an academy perspective, we take cognizance of that. But I also think, I mean, you said, what we did yesterday, today, and tomorrow, you must be able to orientate yourself. So this orientation is part of that paradigm shift of where we position the transformation of knowledge as an imperative component of our overall transformation activities. Because we've got, you know, some of the best brains in multiple fields of science, not just, you know, the hardcore sciences, even the social sciences and humanities. And as a collective, we need to converge those energies to drive many of this. So I'm very pleased to see that even the department is thinking of these projects, because it does a lot of things. It also instills a responsibility of the young people, armed with a certificate of a degree. What do I now do to serve the community? So congratulations on that. And I'm glad that you picked up on, you know, this whole community engagement and convergences, because one of the things that I was going to ask you, and perhaps you can expand on this a bit more, is this so-called quadruple helix of bringing together the various players. Now I have seen that you, in your portfolio as DG, have put into place several policy frameworks. And how would, if you were to look back on a record card, have we fared in this advancement of the quadruple helix of bringing together policy first stakeholders, you know, academia, the general public, and business? What's your take on that?
I don't think we've done this sufficiently well. In fact, even the previous helix of private sector, academia, and government, I really don't think we've done this very, very well. We've all worked a little bit as academia, and we've done very well. We've worked as a private sector, and then as government. Perhaps in the last couple of years, within the National System of Innovation, we've tended to do that much, much better than we've done before. But I don't think even there we had optimized ourselves in terms of the needs, for instance, of industry, and bring them back into our research agenda in a manner that optimize how the private sector operates. We had started something which we were piloting before this document, called sector innovation funds, but it was a very small amount and very little, where we would put some money on the table and work with the private sector in terms of the problems they have, and they would put some resources on the table. We've had a number in the agricultural sector where we've been able to do that, the sugar industry, the paper manufacturing industry, and a couple, but I don't think it was at scale and impact that we wanted. So if you now talk about the quadruple helix, it makes life even more complicated. So one of the things that we tried to do even in the period of consulting for the decadal plan, we've gone out to civil society, starting with the civil society within NEDLEC. And I still think that we haven't done that well in terms of continuing to engage with community. So this is something that I think in the next 5 or so years, we all need to think creatively around how do we do this in a much more efficient way than we've done it before. On the work that we're doing on indigenous knowledge systems, we think we are beginning to do this very, very well. Just to give you an example, on something called the recognition of prior learning. Some of us, I am part of that. We were born not in hospitals. We were born in homes.
Yeah.
And the people who were responsible for midwifery in homes were not formal nurses, but they were giving birth to thousands and thousands of people. And this continues to be the case in rural areas. How do we bring those people closer to the knowledge they have? And how do we make sure that that knowledge is recognized? Because whether we like it or not, you and I are here in Pretoria. We are not in Chabazimbi. We are not in Nkangala, in the deep parts of Mpumalanga. So we've set up a program which is called Recognition of Prior Learning. And we now have a well-structured program working with traditional healers, working with the traditional leadership on how this can be done. University of KZN has played a very, very important role with piloting this in KZN. So that's one example, again, of really working with communities in this triple helix, not in just seeing them as people you do research with,
Right.
but people that you bring to be part of this. The other area of work which I think we should take full advantage of is something called citizen science, which you're very familiar with. Because in citizen science, again, you bring the knowledge that people have much, much closer. And sometimes they may not have scientific observations, but when I visited my in-laws in Guanongong, they would look at the sky and they will tell you that in the next 3 days it's going to rain. So for agricultural activities, for livestock management, they didn't need a university or a science council to tell them about this for their livelihood. So I do hope that as we go forward, this quadruple helix will bring meaning to it in a way that really, in this launch that I talked to you about of the National Biosecurity, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development actually invited small-scale farmers, because if you talk about biosecurity, they need to be part of that and they need to know exactly what it's all about. So I think we haven't done well, but I think we have an opportunity, drawing on the lessons learned on a few things that we've done, to really enhance this in the next 5 to 10 years.
No, thank you. I just also wanted to make a point, DJ, and I'm sure you're aware of this, that the DSI requested ASAF to conduct a study among the various government departments to assess to what extent science, technology, and innovation are within their policy documentation. And I'm not sure if you've seen the report, but it is very, very sad. Okay, we understand that the word innovation is somewhat of a slogan in more recent times, but it was poorly represented in policy documentation. Second to that, in questionnaire, interviews, there was a lot more awareness of it, but it's still not in the policy documents. So I think there too, there's an inherent problem that if we are to converge as a government society with all sectors of governance, that there should be crosstalk I know there's like a ministerial, interministerial committee, etc. now, but there's still too much of red tape and gatekeeping for us to have transparent, clear, and open discussions. I mean, a point in question is, why does it take so long to get a policy document cleared through the gatekeepers before it can be implemented? You know, so similarly, and you've been in a room previously when we've hosted, other lectures, etc., with international partners, the general public feel that when they have to process documentation from, getting permits to whatever, they only see red flags. There's not much of you know, advancement or to make the processes cleaner. And I think from a policy people interface, there's a lot more that needs to be done there. I mean, we've recently had instances, particularly during the COVID period, of foreign students not being able to travel because of, home affairs issues, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, I don't want to list particular ones, but these are the sorts of things that are in there. So how can we, collective we, help promote these overcoming of hurdles, and who gets to speak the tune to make things happen?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. I recently went to Pietermaritzburg and hired a car, went into a hotel, check-in in the hotel. They asked me for my identity, and I think I used my driver's license. And when I was going back 2 days later, I realized that my driver's license was not in my bag. And I was trying to retrace what had happened with my driver's license, and I couldn't remember. And at that time, what occurred to me was going into the queue of getting another driver's license. And I just was not ready because this one is new, is less than a year old, because of the experience that I had. So the thing that occurred to me was, what is going to happen? Am I going to go back to the same process, or will the Department of Transport or the area in Midrand where I got my license ask me to put my finger, my face would come up, and they would say, yes, your license is still valid for 5 years, and they would print it, and I don't have to start the process from scratch. Now, these things are possible these days, yes, and it will bring government closer to people in terms of using innovation to make the lives of citizens, yes, much, much quicker. The second example that I want to give to you as part of agreeing with you, and then to say what should we do, is that I have just flown back from Japan, coming from the Science Forum with the minister. As a non-citizen in Japan, I was standing on the queue to have my passport and myself cleared to leave Japan. And I was seeing in a very envious way the Japanese citizens who were going through the gates without anybody quickly, because they had a camera and a recognition of their passport, and the triangulation of the data would allow them to go through without anyone. I say, I wish we could try this in South Africa. So you're absolutely right. This day and age, innovation and data and the way that we provide services in government could be enhanced quite considerably. We have a role to play. What I would suggest is that we see ourselves as the innovation component of government to play that role. It's not always easy. And in my own experience, it's not because people don't want to listen to you, but they've got big problems. And when you come with a solution that even you think makes sense, there's a feeling that says, please go away, come back in 6 months time when my problems are gone. And sometimes we need to collectively say, well, actually, you need me now when you have a problem, because if you don't use this innovation, if 6 months, you will extend to a year. So I think we all have to continuously figure out how can we play this role within government, but also within society, because as you know, the White Paper and the Decadal Plan talk about the whole of society to innovation. My own worry is that if we don't take that mantra and use it as a way of doing things as a country, we're going to be left behind, because just taking the issue you raised earlier on, we are not going to get more jobs in some of the sectors. We are going to have less of them. So the innovation in informal sector, the innovation by young people, us adopting innovation in order to improve, us being close to the citizen is one of the ways in which I think we have to go back to the point that you asked me earlier on, what is the single most important issue in this new policy environment is our orientation. So that also proves that.
Right. I have a few more questions, but I must at least address some of the questions in the chat box. One question is, do we have advocacy groups for science and policy makers in South Africa? And are there any evidence-based skills development programs in place? And if so, how are they being implemented? That's from Anonymous.
So I don't think we have advocacy groups on science. One of the policy directives, as you know, that we have given to the National Research Foundation, we amended their act to say within the science system, can we earmark up to 4% of our budget for science engagement? So the NRF, I think, is working very, very hard. We're hoping perhaps at the next year, this is one of the areas of work that they would announce, including what I call, or what I would say, the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology has done, which they call Science in the City. What they do is they go and have a topic, and they invite in a town hall arrangement a topic, and then they would then ask people to talk about the topic. And one of the topic we had in Cape Town, very small group of people, is during the COVID-19 vaccines, why is it that when we have so much information about vaccines, people still don't want to vaccinate? Yeah. So it started the conversation, but to answer your question, I don't think we have advocacy groups. Yeah. In the time when I think we were in the nuclear development in South Africa, I think we did have a few of these advocacy groups, but they seem to have died natural death. I don't know why. And then there was a second part of the question. Sorry, I missed that.
The second part was, are there any evidence-based skills development programs in place? And if so, how are they implemented?
I'm not sure what is meant by evidence-based skills development, but what we are doing broadly, and I'll give another specific examples, is between ourselves and the Department of Higher Education and Training as a HESI system, we are developing something which we call an Innovation Skills Compact, which will be presented to ministers for all other government departments, by the way. And what we have identified within, for instance, the areas that we're working, just to give specific example, in the area of this biosecurity that I referred to earlier on, the Higher Education Department has come with what they call Agri-SETA. So it's the SETA, Sectoral Education Training Authority in agriculture, that will be providing the necessary skills that are needed for people to use science knowledge in making sure that our phytosanitary infrastructure and data supports our trade, for instance. In the area of hydrogen and fuel cells, we've met with the Energy Water SETA as part of providing young, in fact, these were unemployed graduates, gave them the skills of integrating fuel cells into the electricity system with the electronics aspect of it. So So I would say we are beginning now to identify specific areas of work that in the innovation system would like to drive. And we don't only produce, if you like, masters and PhD top-end skills, but these technical skills that are solely needed, whether we're talking about deep mining and bringing new sources of technology in the mining. So I would say the answer is yes. Is it at the level, impact and scale we're looking for? Maybe not yet, but I think as we implement and as we work closer with our counterparts at the higher education and training, we will begin to identify specific ones whilst addressing, I guess, the broader skills shortage in the country.
Yeah. You did mention about, information and the resistance to the uptake of vaccine. But Priscilla Reddy asks, what are your reflections on, the community and behavior? I don't think we're completely out of the COVID pandemic, but, following the COVID pandemic.
I think maybe let me first express my sincere thanks to the social science and humanities community, because they stepped up and raised their hands at the time when we were all baffled by things that we think made sense. And they conducted a range of surveys together with the infrastructure that we had funded to try and understand, the perceptions of community, both in the early stage of understanding, what COVID-19 is, up to the stage when, now we've got the vaccine, are you going to be vaccinated? And if not, why not? So I think those surveys they came very, very handy for policymakers, because we would then work with the social scientists and humanities to bring this information to policymakers. And it was greatly appreciated because it gave and provided insights that I think could not have been clear to policymakers. So that I think was done. However, what I think we still need to probably understand and think about going forward is, I don't think we've all fully understood the impact of COVID. People are saying that we have probably an increase in mental health as a result of COVID and adjusting to COVID and of course post-COVID. Now, I don't think in my recollection, any of the surveys that we've done recently gives a sense of where we as a society. But as you know, in the decadal plan, we've identified something which we call a societal grand challenge. And one of the areas is what we call the future of society. So maybe this could be the first survey of a range of these. And then, of course, I am aware that there's also a study that is being done, linking back to the previous question, trying to get the perception of society about science and their understanding of science and what it means, and the trust of scientists, whether you can trust them, because remember, one of the concerns about not being vaccinated was how is it that within a space of 9 months, you've developed a vaccine, you've done clinical trials, both in animals and human beings, to be able to have a vaccine that I could have in my body without being worried about anything. So is it about trust to us as scientists, or is it about trust in the way that we develop a trial? So these issues still remain unresolved issues that I think we continuously need to get to the bottom of, in order for us as scientists to understand how we do our work or how we conduct ourselves, so that society has confidence in our work and how we provide solutions to the challenges of society.
Yeah. So DG, you are aware that GTAC, together with the DPME and NRF, put out a national narrative on reflections of the COVID pandemic. what did we get right? Where did we go wrong? And should we have another, pandemic? What lessons have we learned? So I just want to raise that with the audience. There's questions are coming far and few between, DG, but I'm aware of your time, and I still want to reserve a few minutes for some things that I have, which pertain to the academy in particular. But I'm going to allow one from Kelly Pistorius. I mean, using your collective insights, being in the DG hot seat for this many years, how have your thoughts evolved regarding the best practice for providing science, technology, and innovation advice to government?
You need soft and hard approach to the work. If I just reflect on ourselves and what we have done as science and innovation, and reflect in the early years, 2006, 2010, and now, including, for instance, the quality of conversation we're having with Treasury, it's different. What has changed? I think we've been very methodical in looking for pilots and areas of work where we demonstrate the value of science to society and to government. One of the things we're trying to do now is to quantify some of these in order, for instance, when you speak to people in Treasury, unless you can quantify things in money terms, they still think this is great. So it's not great. So this is a capacity that we are developing. But even besides that, for an example, COVID was great, because when the country needed ventilators when the rest of the world could not provide, we were able to put together people in the science system to make ventilators that were needed. When the variants of the virus and the mutations were happening, it's our scientists that made those announcements. So all of a sudden, the interest of government in looking at science to provide solutions just went, in my view, an order of magnitude. But however, there are elements where you also have to be, I don't want to say you lose your cool, but sometimes you have to be hard and indicate that if you don't do this now, we're going to be left behind. So you use your communication skills, therefore, to be robust in your engagements. And like now, you said that the investments in science, technology, and innovation in other government departments is small. Now, you can't do that by being collegial. You then need to say, what instruments can we put in place to make sure that that happens? So we are proposing, for instance, something which is called budget coordination, where we say, agree that each department needs to put together a certain percentage of its budget for science, technology, and innovation. Whether initially it's just to integrate innovation in the public health system to improve access, or whether it's going all the way into research in the diagnostics and in the active pharmaceutical ingredient across the spectrum, we will evolve over time. So we've identified specific instruments that we can use within government in order to unlock resources. And then thirdly, of course, is how do we get people who might be seconded from the system into some of these government departments. We've identified that as a very important area of work, because you can have the money, you can have the commitment to do the work, but unless you have a body and soul and a warm body that in that department makes this thing happen. And then, of course, at the ministerial level, we've got this IMC. So it's both a carrot and a stick, if you want to use that metaphor. You need a carrot, you need to try and get people to embrace, showcase with things that work, how you can enhance their activities. This wonderful partnership with the Department of Agriculture using biotech techniques for phytosanitary is an example. Mining has agreed with us on how you can mine and bring innovations in the next generation of mining. So there's a partnership there. So it's evolving. Those are soft issues, but then we have to say, please, we need money. So there we are a bit harder in how you approach that. I hope that answers Kali's question.
I'm
but
going
it's
to
not.
remember the carrot and stick approach for a very long time. DG, there's two things I need to bring for my sake to bring this session to a close. First, how do you see, or what value do you see of a national academy to a country like ours? So I'll let you take that one because the other question is very unrelated.
I think the academy is a huge resource for a country, and you should see yourself as that resource. One of the requests I'd like the academy, though, to make is that the issuing of statements is a great idea, but how many people read the statements? How many people actually know that the academy has issued this statement and notice the impact of the statement? So
it's like over 14,000
readers.
Over 14,000, yeah. On our networks, we have over 14,000 people at least.
And what happens?
But sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I would like the academy to probably consider other ways of raising the profile on the role of science in society.
Okay.
I think we have an opportunity. You remember the issue I raised of the ICGB, where they have this sort of town hall discussion on, in that particular case, it was fake news vis-a-vis scientific information. You can't issue a statement on that. You need to bring people in a town hall facilitated by somebody.
So DG, we do have that. It's our presidential roundtable, which the president of the academy hosts. Okay. And so that point was guided by us introducing this, so that we took science out of the ivory tower, so to speak, into the cold face of intersection with the general public. And then, of course, these used to be face-to-face. And in fact, the one that we had the best response to was in Port Elizabeth at the time, and that was on marijuana. The legalization of it. So we do try to do that, yes.
But if we can enhance, I think we need to enhance that sort of science and public engagement on scientific issues and what they say. Bring the radio in the camera, light, action, kind of things. Collectively, I think we need to think about how we're going to do that. Yes. And then the one I always like to probably give one example of what I thought was an epitome of the academy bringing to society the value of science. If you remember during the height of COVID and the explanation that was provided, I mean, one of your members, Professor Abdul Karim Salim, on COVID and explaining what is a complex biological process in a television media peak of the listening period, and people were on the edge of their seats. So can we replicate that maybe once a year or twice a year or something like that? So I really do think you are an excellent resource in the country. But again, how do we use this resource to help us to inform decisions, to engage society so they have a better appreciation of the role of science in their lives? Yeah. DG, this next question may be a sensitive one, but I have to ask it, I'm afraid. In the recent conflict in the Ukraine and Russia, some members of our academy have been pushing for ASAF to push out a statement. And there have been claims in the media by some members and also from media personalities that ASAF has been gagged by government. My first question is, and I want to reassure the audience that we've never rehearsed any of these questions. You are getting them firsthand. Did your department issue the academy with any instruction
about gagging or not to speak on the conflict in Ukraine and Russia?
What the department did was to explain how government works. In other words, government takes a policy position on external relations issues. And it's not even us as a Department of Science and Innovation. These are coming from DECO across the road. And as a Department of Science and Innovation, we adhere to the policy position that is taken by DECO. Yeah. Now, if scientists have a view and they want to issue a statement in their capacity as a scientific community, we don't gag scientists. We can always share with them the government policy position, which, as I've indicated to you, we don't even make those policy decisions. They are made by DECO. We then share that with yourself as the academy to say this is the position of government. If you want to issue a statement, as long as you are not issuing that statement as a government statement, that's the issue that I think we were clarifying. I hope that clarifies. So we never get anyone who said, if you want to issue a statement, go ahead,
Yes.
but it can't come under a DSI name because
Yes.
we are allowed to do that.
Yes, and even that, I mean, your office with your signature sends us many memos of things that we have to do with respect to compliance and notices, etc. But we never ever received anything about even the DIRCO position. We saw that all in the media as it promulgated. So I just wanted to clarify to those people here, because this is also going live, that ASAF never received any such instruction, that although our funds are directed through the department to us, we are an independent organization, and we have in fact promoted freedom of speech. And in fact, in personal capacities, many ASAF members, etc., have written. And ASAF's position at this stage is that we have never delved into issues regarding conflict and war, not just the Ukraine and Russia or any of the others previously to it, and that there are so many other relevant human rights issues that we should be focusing on. In fact, our World Science Forum is on social justice, where the Academy and its members will have a strong voice. So I just wanted for us to clarify this, because I get sick and tired of this abuse, in the media, for people who don't even fact check before they go to the press running with cowardly sorts of comments. DG, I could go on, and you are such a gracious guest to have in the chair. Your knowledge and your breadth of knowledge is just supersedes all of our expectations. And I guess that is why you have, your department, and led through you, have performed so well. And for me, as the executive officer, it's been a privilege to work under your leadership. And I will definitely not forget the carrot and stick approach. I think that's a marvelous one. In fact, the next piece I write in our newsletter is going to be entitled Carrot and Stick. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to all the others who have asked for put questions in the chat. I'm mindful of DG's time, and I'm on behalf of all of us at the Academy and our council, we want to extend our sincere gratitude to you and the team at the DSI for constantly supporting us. And we also love the engagements we have on a quarterly basis with senior members of the department. And we look forward to a continued collegial engagement for enhancing academic excellence in the service of society. Thank you, DG, and thank you for our colleagues for supporting us today. And please thank your PA as well for securing this time in your diary. Have a good day forward, and I'm sure we will see you soon.
Thanks. If the ones who have some issues, chat and Q&A, if you want to collect them, Professor Sudial, and send them to us, we're more than happy to try and respond to them. So
okay, thank you very much. Renata will do that for us. Thank you so much, DG.
Okay. Thanks very much. And thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. All the best.